You're watching Mrs. Perez, Module 3, Topic 1, Lesson 1's video. Today's lesson is Human Number Line. We are on page 439 in our book. First, we're going to go over our learning goals. The first learning goal you will see is use positive and negative numbers to describe quantities having opposite directions. Number 2, explain the meaning of 0 in context represented by positive and negative numbers. Number 3, identify and represent a number and its opposite on a number line. Number 4, represent, interpret, and order positive and negative integers and other rational numbers using number lines and inequality statements. We do have two key terms here. We have negative numbers and infinity. We're going to go to the next page, which this page is going to be page 440. It is titled Number Line Geography. We're going to do number 1 first. It says, what do you know about number lines? Well, right now you probably know that number lines go from 0 to infinity. You've probably heard that word before. So number lines can go beyond 10. They can go beyond 20. They just keep going from 0 and on. Today, we're going to learn something different. So going on to number 2, it says, label the number line and be sure to include 0. So I'm going to take this number line here and I'm going to label it. And I'm going to go ahead and start with 0 with what we know. We know that the numbers go in order from 0 and beyond. So it's going to just keep going. In this case, I can go up to 10. Okay. On number 2, it says, then plot and label a single point of your choice on a number line. I'm going to go ahead and pick 5 on the number line here. That's going to be my point. And then number 2A says draw a ray or an arrow. So ray and arrow are the same thing. It's going to begin at my point to represent the numbers larger than the value at my point. So I'm going to go from my point, which is 5, and I'm going to draw an arrow as best as I can going this way. Okay, so that's my ray starting from my point that's going larger. 2B says draw a ray or an arrow beginning at your point to represent the numbers smaller than the value at your point. Well, we all know that this number smaller than 5 would be going this way. So I'm going to take from my point and I'm going to draw a line or an arrow going to the left of my point. So that's going to be my ray. Going on to C, at the ends of the number line, there are arrows going in both directions. What do these arrows indicate? Well, we've been talking about it already. These arrows indicate numbers beyond the number line. So that's what we're going to write here. Numbers beyond the number line. Okay. Going on to 2D. What do you think is on the number line to the left of the 0? Well, that's what we're learning today. The numbers to the left of this 0 are going to be your negative numbers. So that's what we're going to put here. They are negative numbers. Okay. All right, going on to the next page. We're going on to page 441. On page 441, we're going to skip this part and we're going to go on to our key terms now. So if you have your key term journal, this is a good time to get it out so you can fill in the blanks. We're going to start in the paragraph, a number line can be created by reflecting the positive numbers across 0. What they mean by reflecting, you have positive 1 here, and then across the 0 is our negative numbers. The value to the left of the 0, so that would be our first blank if we were doing our key term journal. The values to the left of 0 on the number line are called negative numbers and are labeled with a negative sign. You'll notice you have positive 1 and negative 1 here. That symbol in front of it is called a negative. The positive values extend to positive infinity. It keeps going. The negative numbers keep extending to the negative infinity. That brings us to our next key term. Infinity, represented by the symbol, kind of looks like a sideways 8 here, means a quantity with no end. So quantity with no end. It doesn't end. It just keeps going. And you'll notice that these are your infinity signs. They're sideways 8s, basically. And you can have positive or negative. Okay, we're on page 442. It says, describe the change in the values of the numbers as you move to the right of the number line. So if we add a number line and we keep going from 0 to the right, those numbers are all getting larger. So that's what we're going to put right here for 2. They are larger. Okay, number 3, describe the change in the values of the numbers as you move to the left of the number line. So from 0 to the left, these numbers in front of the, or behind the negative line do look like they're getting bigger, but when the number is negative, these numbers behind the negative, even though they're getting bigger, are actually getting smaller. The farther away from the 0 for the negative means they are getting smaller. So 3 is going to be, they are smaller. They're not getting bigger, they're getting smaller. So knowing that, we'll know that all of these numbers have to be bigger than these negative numbers. All of these are smaller than these. Okay. Moving on. We're going to skip page 443 and move on to page 444. Opposite numbers are reflections of each other across 0 on the number line. The opposite of a positive number is a corresponding negative number. The opposite of a negative number is a corresponding positive number. Attaching a negative sign to a number means reflecting that number across 0 on a number line. That means you go across the number line, across the 0. Number 4, use symbols to represent the opposite of positive 4.5 and the value it represents. The opposite of positive 4.5 would be negative 4.5 because the opposite of positive is a negative. Going on to 5, use symbols to represent the opposite of negative 6 and the value it represents. Well, the opposite of a negative is a positive. So this would be positive 6. You'll notice that there's a negative here. Whenever there's a negative here, those actually cancel each other out, making it a positive. That's why it's positive 6. What do you notice about the distance from 0 of corresponding opposite numbers? Well, let's look at this. If I had 3 over here on the right of the number line, or the 0, I would still have to go from 0, I would have to go 3 spaces to the right. If I was going from 0 to -3, which is the opposite of +3, I would still have to go 3 distance to the left, 3 spaces. That is the same distance of each other from 0. So 6, if we were writing the answer to this, we would say they are the same distance from 0. Okay, going on to number 7. What is the opposite of 0? Well, let's look at this. We have a 0 here, but is there any zeros over here or going over here? Even if it's going infinity, those numbers are going to keep going and doesn't come back to 0. So there is no opposite of 0. So it doesn't have an opposite. Okay. Number 8. Name the opposite of each number, then plot each number and its opposite on the number line. So we're going to plot these 3 and their opposites. So these are both negative, so I know I'm going to have to plot those negatives and the positives. Here's a positive, so I'm going to do that positive and the negative of it. This number line isn't labeled, so let's go ahead and label it. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, but we just learned that to the left of the 0 is negative. So it's going to be -1 and so on. Okay. Starting with 1.5. Well, 1.5 is going to be between 1 and 2. So on the positive, between 1 and 2, I'm going to plot 1.5. And every time you plot, you always label so you know what the number represents. And again, even though these are negatives, 1.5 would still be in the middle of 1 and 2, even though they're negatives. This would be -1/2 though. Okay, we're going to go to -5 and plot that. Still labeling it. Then we're going to do the positive. Okay, 9.9 tells me it's between 9 and 10. That 9 tells me it's really close to 10. So we're going to go to negative as close as we can, approximately to -9.9. And then we're going to do the opposite, which is +9.9. Okay. Going back, or going to the next page. We are going to skip page 445 and move on to, we're skipping several pages here. We're going to move on to page 449. Okay. On page 449, we're at activity 1.5, comparing and ordering rational numbers. Helen and Grace started a company called Top Notch. They checked the company's bank balance at the end of each week. The table shown represents the first 10 weeks of operation. Overdrafts, or weeks when they owed the bank money, are represented by amounts within parentheses. For example, 25 denotes an overdraft of 25. They owe the bank 25. Amounts that are not in parentheses are when they made money. Okay, so we have this table in the number line. Number 1 says use the table and number line to answer each question. 1A says write each as a positive or negative number and then plot the number on the number line. So going to our table, week 1 is 159. There is no parentheses here, so that's going to be 159. Okay, week 2, it's in parentheses, so that's going to be -201. Week 3 is 231 without parentheses, so that's positive. Week 4 is in parentheses, so that's negative. Week 5 is in parentheses, so that's also negative. 6 is in parentheses. 7 is not in parentheses. 8 is not. And we're going to keep going until we finish filling in the rest of the table, okay? It also said plot the number on the number line. So positive 159, I'm going to find where 159 would possibly be. Since this is 150 and 200, I would think this is approximately 175 maybe. So 159 is probably around this spot. And again, I'm going to always label my points. Negative 201. I'm going to go over here. 201 is really close to negative 200. Positive 231. Okay, so this is probably 225 right there. So I'm going to say 231 is going to be approximately right here. Negative 456. That's pretty close to negative 450, so I'm going to put it here. Negative 156. That's probably close to negative 150. Negative 12. Ooh, let's see. This would probably be negative 25. Negative 12 would be somewhere in between that. These are approximately where it would be. We don't have to have it exact. This is probably 275, so 281 is possibly right there. 175. Oh, we said 175 would probably be right there. Okay, 192 is probably close to 200. And then 213 would probably be somewhere around here. Okay, so we just plotted our numbers on the number line. What does 0 represent in this situation? So since we're talking about money, this 0 would actually be when they didn't have, or they didn't make or owe money, okay? They didn't make or own during that time. Or own. Or that should be O. Okay. In which week did they have the highest bank balance? Highest has to be somewhere on the right of this number line. It looks like the highest had to be 281. So looking at my table, what week was that? 281 was week 7. So I'm going to put week 7. Okay. In which week did they show the greatest overdraft? Overdraft meant that it was to the left of the number line, and the greatest overdraft would be the one farthest from 0 to the left. So that one would be negative 56. Negative 56 here is on week 4. So that would be our answer here. Okay. Number 2, for each pair of weeks, write an inequality statement to compare the positive and negative numbers. Interpret the statement in context. So we got week 1. Week 1 was positive 159, and we're going to write an inequality here because we're comparing the two numbers. Week 5 is negative 156, and since you have a positive and negative here, you can automatically know which one is greater. positives will always be greater than a negative. So if I was writing my inequality, the open side would be facing my greater number. Okay, week 4 is negative 456. Week 6 is negative 12. So looking at this, 12 is closer to 0 than 456. So since negative 12 is closer to 0, that one would actually be greater than negative 456. Notice the numbers behind the negative sign. If the number behind the negative sign is greater, then that one's going to be actually less than the one that has like a smaller number behind the negative sign. Okay. Last page for this lesson, we're on page 450. On page 450, it says you can compare different types of numbers by plotting the numbers on a number line. 3, use the number line to answer each question. Plot each value on the number line. Okay, so we got negative 6 2/3. That's got to be between 6 and 7. So I'm going to look to where 6 and 7 would be. This would be negative 6 and negative 7, so it's got to be somewhere in between there. And again, I'm going to label that. Okay, negative 20 is right over here. And even though negative 20 is there, I'm still going to label it. We got 0. We got 10.5. 10.5 has to be between 10 and 11. Negative 17.5 would be between 17 and negative 17 and 18. This is negative 16, 17, so it's got to be right here. Negative 17.5. Going on to negative 7.98. That's going to be between negative 7 and 8. And these may not be exact, but we're plotting them as close as we can to what we know. This would be 11, so this would be 12. You got negative 3, 1, 2, 3, so that would be negative 3. Negative 13, 1, 2, 3, so that would be negative 13. Okay. So we plotted each value on the number line. Now we're going to go on to 3b. Which of the numbers has the least value? Least value has to be to the left of the 0. And to be the least value, it's the one farthest away, which in this case is going to be negative 20, because it's the farthest from 0. Okay. 3c. Which of the numbers has the greatest value? So we're looking at greatest value. Greatest value has to be the one farthest from 0 on the right. In this case, it looks like it's 12. So 12 is going to be our answer. And it's because it's the farthest from 0. Now the only difference here is that negative 20 is the farthest to the left of the 0, and 12 is the farthest to the right of the 0. Order the numbers from least to greatest. Since we've already plotted them here, we literally could go from least to greatest, least being on the left, greatest being on the right. We can go in order from what we plotted. That was negative 6 2/3. So that should be the numbers in order from least to greatest using that number line. That's one easy way of being able to do that. Number 4, plot each rational number on the number line, then insert a greater than, less than, or equal symbol to make each number sentence true. A, negative 10.25. So that's got to be somewhere right here. Negative 15 2/3. And like we said, the one that's farthest from the 0 on the left will be smaller, while this one closer to the 0 is going to be bigger. So I'm going to use my greater than sign here. Going on to the next one. Negative 17 and negative 17, those are the same. Sorry about that. Those are the same, so those are equal to each other. Okay, next, C, we have 5 2/3 and negative 8. In this case, since that's the farthest to the left, it will be smaller. And that's it. Thanks for watching. You may rewatch this as many times as you need to so that you can get it down. The main thing of this is that you have negative numbers on the left, and positive is the opposite of negative, and negative is the opposite of positive. I hope you guys enjoyed.